Rain hammered against the outpost windows with a violence that made conversation difficult. The storm had arrived suddenly during the afternoon of their 6th day, turning the sky black and the forest into a blur of movement. Lightning split the darkness every few seconds, accompanied by thunder that shook the building's walls. Weather satellite didn't predict this, Grick said. Their crystalline form dimmed with concern. The system intensity is 3 times what the models showed. Dr. Singh checked the displays, frowning. Atmospheric conditions here can be unstable. The storm will pass. We are secure. But Daniel felt uneasy. He stood by the window, watching the trees bend under the wind. Something about the timing felt wrong. Predators could sense weather changes before technology could. They knew when to take shelter and when to take advantage. The power flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Emergency lights kicked in automatically. That's normal, Dr. Singh assured everyone. The backup generators are functioning perfectly. Tobin had all 4 hands wrapped around a mug of hot liquid, seeking comfort. How long do these storms usually last? Records show anywhere from 2 hours to 2 days. We have supplies for weeks, so there is nothing to worry about. At dusk, the lights flickered again and stayed out longer this time. When they came back, they were dimmer. Wren immediately went to the control panel, his Pleiadian features tight with worry. The western perimeter fence is showing power loss, he said. Section 7. Dr. Singh joined him, pulling up the security grid. The lightning must have hit a junction box. The fence is still electrified, just at reduced capacity. How reduced? 70%. Is that enough to keep predators out? It should be. Daniel noticed Dr. Singh's use of should be rather than will be. He moved to the window overlooking the western section of the compound. Rain made visibility poor, but the fence light still glowed in the darkness, marking the perimeter. Then one section went dark completely. Dr. Singh, Daniel said quietly. She looked up from the controls and saw what he saw. A 20-meter gap in the fence lights. No glow, no power, just darkness. That's not good, she said, abandoning her attempt at calm reassurance. Alarms started blaring. Wren's hands flew across the control panel. Multiple sensor failures. Western fence section 7 is completely offline. I'm showing a breach. What does breach mean? Neera asked, her voice rising. It means something can get through. The observation tower cameras switched to infrared automatically. On the displays, everyone saw it. A massive thermal signature just outside the darkened fence section. The Thornback had been waiting in the forest, watching. And when the storm gave it an opportunity, it had come. The creature approached the dead section of fence carefully, testing it with one armored limb. No electrical discharge, no deterrent. It pushed against the barrier, and the damaged fence gave way with a screech of tearing metal. It's inside the perimeter, Wren said, his voice breaking. For a moment, no one moved. The reality of what was happening seemed too impossible to process. An apex predator had just entered their safe zone. All their technology, all their planning and nature had found a way through. Then the Thornback turned its massive head toward the outpost, and everyone saw its eyes reflect in the infrared cameras. Intelligent eyes. Calculating eyes. Everyone to the central building, Dr. Singh ordered. Now. Tobin froze completely, all 4 arms locked in place. Neera made a sound like a gasp or a sob inside her water suit. Wren backed against the wall, sliding down into a crouch with his arms wrapped around his head. Daniel felt something shift inside him. Later, he would try to explain it to the others, but words would fail. It was like a switch flipping, an old program activating. Every human instinct for danger assessment kicked in at once. His heart rate spiked, then steadied. His breathing deepened. His vision sharpened. Iris, he said calmly. Get everyone to the central building. Seal the doors. What are you going to do? Buy you time. Before anyone could argue, Daniel grabbed one of the plasma rifles from the equipment locker. Dr. Singh kept them for emergencies, though she had said they would never need them. He checked the charge, flicked off the safety, and headed for the door. Daniel, wait, Dr. Singh said. It's already inside. If we all run, it will chase. Predators chase. But if I make myself the threat, it will focus on me. That's insane. That's human. He stepped outside into the storm. Rain soaked him immediately, cold and brutal. Wind tore at his clothes. He could barely see 10 meters ahead, but he knew where the Thornback was. He could feel it the way his ancestors had felt lions in the African night. The way they had felt bears in northern forests. The way they had felt every predator that ever looked at humanity and saw prey. Except humans were not prey. Not really. Not ever. Daniel walked toward the breach in the fence, making no attempt at stealth. He made noise, lots of it, calling out into the storm, making himself known, drawing attention. The Thornback emerged from behind one of the outbuildings, and Daniel saw it clearly for the first time without barriers between them. It was massive, easily 4 meters tall at the shoulder. Its armor looked like stone, and its teeth were the length of his forearm. They locked eyes across 20 meters of rain-swept ground. Daniel raised the rifle but did not fire. He stood his ground, feet planted, making himself as large as possible. He did not break eye contact. He did not run. The Thornback lowered its head and bellowed, a sound that Daniel felt in his chest. A challenge, a threat. This was its territory, its hunt, its rules. Daniel bellowed back, a wordless human shout that carried every bit of aggression his species had ever needed to survive. The rifle was ready, but he did not want to shoot. Killing the creature was not the point. Making it understand was the point. The Thornback circled left. Daniel turned with it, keeping the rifle trained on its center mass. The creature was testing him, looking for weakness, for fear. It had hunted 1,000 prey animals that ran or froze. It had never encountered something that stood and challenged. Another bellow from the creature. Another shout from Daniel. The Thornback feinted forward. Daniel did not flinch. He fired a warning shot into the ground between them, and the plasma blast lit up the rain like lightning. The creature jumped back, surprised. They circled again. The Thornback's posture changed slightly. Less aggressive, more cautious. It was reassessing. This was not easy prey. This was something that fought back. Something dangerous. Daniel took a step forward, just one step but deliberate, claiming space. The Thornback took a step back. Still watching, still calculating, but no longer certain. Another step forward from Daniel. The creature retreated another step. This went on for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The storm raged around them. Lightning provided brief moments of perfect visibility. Thunder covered the sound of Daniel's racing heart. Finally, the Thornback turned and walked toward the breach in the fence, not running because predators do not run from prey, but leaving because whatever Daniel was, he was not worth the risk. The creature paused at the fence line and looked back once. Daniel met its gaze and raised the rifle slightly. A clear message. A territory claimed. The Thornback disappeared into the forest. Daniel stood in the rain for several more minutes, making absolutely certain it was gone. Then his legs started shaking and he realized how terrified he had been the entire time. But he had not let the fear control him. He had used it, channeled it, made it work for survival instead of against it. That was the difference. That was what Professor Kuvar had not understood. Fear was not the enemy. Fear was a tool. Humans had just learned to use it differently than most species. The outpost door opened and Iris ran out, followed by Dr. Singh. "It's gone," Daniel said. His voice sounded surprisingly normal. "But we need to fix that fence before it decides to come back." Dr. Singh stared at him for a long moment. "How did you do that?" "I'm not sure. Instinct, mostly. That was the bravest thing I have ever seen." "Or the stupidest," Daniel said, managing a weak smile. "Maybe both." They spent the rest of the night making emergency repairs to the fence while the storm slowly died. Tobin eventually emerged from the central building, still shaking but functional. He looked at Daniel with something between awe and fear. "You faced it," the Rigelian said. "You just stood there and faced it." "Yeah, I couldn't move. I couldn't think. My whole body just locked up. That's not your fault. That's just how your species evolved. Mine evolved differently. But how? How can you override survival instincts like that?" Daniel thought about it while securing a fence panel. "I don't think I overrode them. I think I used different ones. When prey sees a predator, it freezes or runs. When a predator sees a predator, it evaluates. Territory, threat assessment, risk versus reward. I wasn't trying to be brave. I was trying to communicate in a language the Thornback would understand. The language of predators. Yeah." Tobin was quiet for a while, helping with the repairs despite his obvious fear. Finally, he said, "I think Professor Kuvar was very wrong about humans. Maybe. Or maybe he was just wrong about what it means when apex predators go extinct. He thought it was progress. Maybe it's just loss." The fence hummed back to life section by section. Dawn came slowly, washing the forest in pale light. Somewhere out in those trees, the thornback was settling down to rest. It had learned something important during the night. The strange creatures in the outpost were not prey. One of them, at least, was something else entirely. Something worth respecting, something worth avoiding, something that belonged in the forest just as much as any predator did. Morning light filled the common area where the expedition team gathered around their breakfast. No one had slept much after the previous night's events. Tobin kept glancing toward the windows as if expecting the thornback to suddenly appear. Nira had not left her sleeping quarters until Iris personally went to check on her. Ren looked exhausted, his Pleiadian features drawn tight. Dr. Singh had been reviewing sensor data since dawn. Now she pulled up the holographic displays for everyone to see. "I want to show you something," she said. "These are biometric readings from last night. Heart rate, stress hormones, neural activity. Let's start with the moment the fence breach was detected." The graphs appeared in the air, multiple colored lines representing each team member. Most of them spiked dramatically when the alarm started, reaching crisis levels and staying there. As you can see, most of us experienced sustained panic responses. Heart rates over 160 beats per minute. Cortisol levels indicating extreme stress. These readings are consistent with prey species facing predatory threats. She highlighted 2 lines that looked different. They spiked initially but then stabilized into a controlled rhythm. These are Daniel and Iris. Their response is elevated, yes, but notice the pattern. The spike, then the plateau, then controlled fluctuation. Their bodies were preparing for action, not shutting down from fear. "What does that mean exactly?" Grix asked. "It means their physiology supports engagement with danger rather than just escape from it. This is characteristic of species with predatory ancestry." Tobin set down his food untouched. "I have been thinking about what happened, about how I froze. I have trained for emergencies. I know protocols. But when the thornback came through that fence, my body just stopped responding." "That is not failure," Dr. Singh said gently. "That is evolution. Your ancestors survived because they froze when predators approached. Staying perfectly still meant not being detected. It worked for millions of years. But it does not work now. When Daniel walked out to face that creature, I couldn't help. I couldn't do anything." Daniel spoke up from where he sat by the window. "You didn't need to. That wasn't your fight. But what if it had killed you? What if it comes back? Then we deal with it. But running away doesn't always work either. Sometimes predators chase. Sometimes they test. You have to read the situation and respond appropriately." Nira's voice crackled through her suit speakers. "My people have stories about predators. Ancient tales from before we entered the oceans permanently. I always thought they were myths. Metaphors for natural disasters or disease. But they were real, weren't they? We had predators once." "Almost certainly," Dr. Singh confirmed. "Most species do at some point in their evolutionary history. The question is what happened to them. We killed them all," Nira said quietly. "Or we fled from them into the water where they could not follow. Our stories call it the Great Retreat. I thought it was about migrating to find food. But we were running, weren't we?" "Probably." The realization settled over the group like a weight. These were not stupid beings or weak ones. They were simply the descendants of species that survived predation through avoidance rather than confrontation. There was no shame in that. But there were consequences. Over the next few days, Dr. Singh restructured their observations. Instead of just watching the local predators, she taught practical awareness skills. How to read body language, how to identify stalking behavior, how to assess whether a predator was hunting or just passing through. Daniel and Iris became de facto instructors. They shared stories from Earth, explaining how humans learned to coexist with dangerous animals, not by eliminating them or by cowering in fear, but by understanding them. "Predators are not evil," Daniel explained during one session. "They are just trying to survive. They follow certain rules. If you understand those rules, you can predict their behavior." "What rules?" Tobin asked. He had been attending every lesson, determined to overcome his freeze response. "Efficiency. Predators want the easiest meal possible. They will test potential prey, but if it looks too difficult or dangerous, they move on. That is why standing your ground sometimes works. You make yourself look like too much trouble. But how do you overcome the fear? How do you think clearly when every instinct is screaming at you to freeze or run?" Daniel considered this. "I don't think I overcome it. I use it. Fear sharpens my senses, makes me alert. But I have learned to channel it into action instead of paralysis. Maybe it helps that my ancestors were both predator and prey. We know both sides of that exchange. They practice scenarios, not with real predators, obviously, but with simulations and exercises. Tobin learned that he could override his freeze response with conscious effort and practice. It was not easy and it did not feel natural, but it was possible. Grix observed all of this with fascination. Your species is unique in the galactic community. Most civilizations are thousands of years removed from predatory pressures. Humans face them until very recently in your history. Some humans still face them, Iris pointed out. There are places on Earth where predators live right alongside human populations. People die occasionally, but mostly we manage the relationship. How? Nira asked. Respect, awareness, not being stupid. If you go into bear country, you make noise so you don't surprise them. You store food properly. You give them space. Most predator attacks happen because humans do something foolish. On their 10th day on Theros IV, the Thornback returned. But this time, everything was different. The sensors detected it approaching at dusk. Instead of hiding in the observation tower, Dr. Singh had everyone gather at the windows with the lights on, making themselves visible. We are going to show it that we see it, she explained, that we are aware and prepared. The Thornback emerged from the tree line and stopped. It looked toward the outpost and Daniel could swear the creature recognized him specifically. Dr. Singh activated external speakers. She had prepared recordings of various threat signals, deep sounds that carried across the forest, rhythmic patterns that predators would associate with large groups, artificial noises that confused prey-tracking instincts. The team stood together at the windows. They moved deliberately, coordinated. Daniel made sure he was visible at the front. The Thornback's eyes tracked him and he stared back without hostility but without fear. Tobin stood next to Daniel, all forearms visible. He was shaking slightly but held his ground. It is easier with others, the Rigelian murmured. Always is, Daniel agreed. The Thornback watched them for several minutes. Then almost casually it turned and walked away. Not fleeing, not retreating in fear, just leaving. The way a predator leaves when it decides a hunt is not worth the effort. We just communicated with it, Grix said with wonder. Across species, across evolutionary history. We told it we were not prey, and it understood. Dr. Singh was recording everything, her scientific mind processing the implications. This is what Professor Kuvar never understood. He thought predation was about violence and fear. But it is about understanding, about clear communication of boundaries and capabilities. That night they received a transmission from the university. Professor Kuvar wanted to speak with Dr. Singh privately. She took the call in her office while the others waited. When she emerged, she looked surprised. He wants to talk to Daniel. Daniel went to the office, suddenly nervous. The professor's face appeared on the screen, and for a long moment neither spoke. I watched the recordings from the fence breach, Kuvar said finally. All of them. Sir, I didn't mean to... Stop, please listen. The professor's expression was complex. I have spent 200 years building a theory. I collected data from hundreds of worlds. I was certain I understood the pattern, and then you stood in a rainstorm and faced down an apex predator with nothing but instinct and a weapon you did not fire. I did what felt necessary. Yes, that is what troubles me. It felt necessary to you. To the others it felt impossible. That difference is what I missed. I assumed all species evolved away from predation. But you evolved with it. Through it. You became predators while remaining social and cooperative. That should be impossible according to everything I know. But it isn't impossible. We exist, precisely, and that changes everything. Kuvar leaned forward. I was wrong, Mr. Wright. Not about most species eliminating their predators. That data stands. But I was wrong about what it means. I thought it was necessary progress. Now I wonder if it was simply one path among many, and perhaps not the best path, sir. The galaxy is not safe, despite what we tell ourselves. There are dangers out there we have forgotten how to face. We have species that panic at the first sign of real threat, because we have insulated ourselves so completely from natural danger. You faced that Thornback and survived because you understood it, because you could communicate in its language, the language of predators. Yes, and perhaps that is a language the galaxy needs to remember, or at least to understand. Kuvar paused. I am revising my paper. I would like you to contribute. Your perspective is not just different, it is necessary. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Respect earned the hard way. Understanding reached across vast differences. I would be honored, Professor. Good. Finish your expedition safely. Document everything. And Mr. Wright, thank you for challenging me. Old scholars need young challenges. It keeps us honest. The transmission ended. Daniel sat in the quiet office processing what had just happened. Then Iris poked her head in. Everything okay? Yeah, everything is surprisingly okay. They returned to Atheron University 3 days later. The expedition had been a success beyond Dr. Singh's hopes. They had data, recordings, and most importantly, changed perspectives. Tobin no longer froze when startled. Neera began researching her species' forgotten history with predators. Ren admitted that facing his fear had been more valuable than avoiding it. Griggs wrote a paper on predator-prey relationships that became required reading in xenobiology courses. And Daniel understood something new about being human in a galaxy where humans were unique. They were not better. They were not worse. They were just different. And that difference had value. The apex predators were not gone. They never had been. They had simply been forgotten by most of the galaxy. But not by everyone. Not by Earth. Not by humans who still remembered what teeth were for and who had chosen to use them rarely, but remembered how to use them well. 3 months after returning from Theros IV, Daniel sat in the same lecture hall where everything had started. But this time he was not in the back row. He was at the front of the room, standing beside Professor Kuvar, as guest speakers assembled for a special presentation. The hall was packed beyond normal capacity. Students from every department had come, along with faculty members and even some representatives from other universities connected via hologram. Word had spread about the revised paper, and everyone wanted to hear what the legendary Professor Kuvar would say about his changed perspective. Dr. Singh sat in the front row, looking pleased. Iris gave Daniel an encouraging thumbs up from her seat. Tobin occupied his usual spot, but now he sat straighter, more confident. Even Ren had come. Despite his continuing discomfort with discussions of predation, Professor Kuvar stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled crowd. He appeared older somehow, but also more energized than Daniel had seen him before. The weight of certainty had been replaced by the excitement of new discovery. 200 years ago, I began studying extinction patterns across civilized worlds, Kuvar began. I documented how every spacefaring species eliminated their apex predators during early industrial development. I concluded this was necessary for achieving interstellar cooperation. I was convinced I had found a universal law of civilizational progress. He paused, letting that sink in. I was wrong. A murmur ran through the audience. This was not what they expected from the famous professor who never admitted mistakes. Not wrong about the data. That remains accurate. But wrong about my interpretation. Wrong about what it meant. Kuvar gestured to Daniel. A student challenged me. He told me that Earth still has apex predators, including humans themselves. I dismissed this. I was certain that any species reaching the stars must have evolved beyond predation. The holographic display activated, showing images from the Theros IV expedition. The thornback approaching the fence. Daniel standing in the rain. The creature retreating. Then I watched this. A human graduate student facing an apex predator with no barrier between them. Not attacking, not fleeing, but communicating. Establishing boundaries through a language that predators understand. And succeeding. Kuvar pulled up the biometric data. These readings show different physiological responses to identical threats. Most species experience sustained panic when confronted by predators. Humans experience controlled alertness. This is not courage. This is evolutionary adaptation. Humans evolved as pursuit predators who also faced predation themselves. They developed unique threat assessment capabilities as a result. A Centaurian professor in the audience raised her hand. Are you suggesting that eliminating predators was a mistake? No, for most species it was probably necessary. Their psychology could not tolerate constant predatory pressure while building complex civilizations. But I am suggesting it came with costs we failed to recognize. We lost the ability to engage with danger effectively. We lost the understanding of what predation truly means, and we created a false sense of universal safety. Kuvar changed the display to show galactic exploration data. The galaxy is not safe. There are regions with dangers we barely understand. There are species we have yet to encounter. There are situations where running or freezing will not save you, where understanding predatory behavior might mean the difference between survival and extinction. So humans are better prepared for these dangers? Another voice asked. Daniel spoke up for the first time. Not better, different. We have certain instincts that most species lost or never had. But we also have weaknesses you don't have. Aggression we have to constantly manage. Violence that we have to choose not to use. It's not about one species being superior. It's about recognizing that different evolutionary paths create different strengths. A Delphian student Daniel didn't recognize asked, should we try to reintroduce predators to our worlds? To regain what we lost? Absolutely not, Dr. Singh said, standing. That would be catastrophic for most populations. You cannot reverse millions of years of evolution with policy decisions, but you can learn. You can study. You can understand predation intellectually even if you cannot experience it instinctively. Professor Kuvar nodded. Which brings me to the purpose of this lecture. I am proposing a new field of study, comparative threat response xenobiology. We need to understand how different species handle danger, not just to satisfy academic curiosity, but to improve cooperation in dangerous situations. When a mixed species crew faces an unexpected threat, their different responses could save them or doom them. Understanding these differences is crucial. The hologram changed to show the revised paper. This work is co-authored with Dr. Amara Singh and Daniel Wright. It represents a fundamental shift in how we think about predation, extinction, and civilizational development. The core finding is this: apex predators are not gone from the galaxy. They were never gone. They were just forgotten by most species. And one species humanity never forgot because they never eliminated their predators. They learned to live alongside them instead. An Andromedan in the back asked the question Daniel had been expecting. Should we be afraid of humans then? If they are apex predators? The room went very quiet. This was the real question underlying everything. The fear that had made students avoid Daniel after the first lecture. The concern that had nearly prevented the Theros 4 expedition. Daniel looked at Professor Kuvar, who nodded permission for him to answer. Ask Tobin, Daniel said. Gesturing to his Rigelian friend, Tobin stood, all forearms visible, looking nervous but determined. When the thornback broke through the fence, I froze completely. I could not think. I could not move. I would have died if I had been alone. Daniel stepped between us and that creature. He didn't do it because he is a predator. He did it because he is also human. And humans are social creatures who protect their groups. Yes, they have predatory instincts, but they also have strong cooperative instincts. Both things are true at the same time. That is the key insight, Kuvar said. Humans are not simply predators. They are cooperative predators. They can be dangerous, yes, but they choose to direct that capacity toward protection rather than aggression. That choice is what makes them suitable for galactic civilization, not despite their predatory nature, but because of how they manage it. The lecture continued for another hour. Questions flew from every direction. Some people were skeptical, others fascinated, a few still uncomfortable with the whole topic, but the conversation had shifted. Instead of viewing human predatory instincts as a barbaric remnant to be ashamed of, people began seeing them as an interesting adaptation with potential value. After the lecture ended, students crowded around Daniel with questions. No one backed away now. They were curious, engaged, wanting to understand. A Pleiadian student asked about Earth wildlife. An Andromedan wanted to know about human hunting traditions. A Centaurian asked whether predatory instincts helped with military strategy. Daniel answered what he could, aware of Iris laughing nearby at the transformation. 3 months ago, people had avoided them in hallways. Now they were the center of attention. Professor Kuvar approached as the crowd thinned. Walk with me, Mr. Wright. They left the lecture hall and wandered through the university gardens. Students of various species studied under the artificial sunlight, peaceful and safe in their civilized environment. I have been thinking about something you said on Theros 4, Kuvar began. About how I was not wrong that predators are dangerous, but wrong about understanding what they truly are. Yes, sir. The lecture hall buzzed with quiet conversation as students filed in and took their seats. Daniel Wright settled into his usual spot near the back, pulling out his tablet while other beings of various shapes and sizes filled the tiered rows. Some had 4 arms, Others had scales that shimmered under the lights, and a few floated in specialized hover chairs designed for aquatic species. This was Atheron Galactic University, where hundreds of worlds sent their brightest minds to learn. Professor Halim Kuvar entered through the main doors, his long robes flowing behind him. The Centaurian scholar had lived for 3 centuries and written dozens of books that every xenobiology student had to read. His reputation filled the room before he even spoke. "Today we discuss extinction," Kuvar announced, his voice carrying easily across the space. "Specifically, the extinction of apex predators across all civilized worlds." Daniel looked up from his notes. This was going to be interesting. The professor activated the holographic display. Images of creatures from various planets appeared, all of them showing teeth, claws, and aggressive postures. Every species that reached the stars followed the same pattern. During their industrial age, they eliminated their apex predators. This was not cruelty but necessity. These creatures were incompatible with complex civilization. A 4-armed Rigelian named Tobin raised one of his hands. "Why incompatible, Professor?" "Excellent question," Kuvar said, clearly pleased. "Apex predators create constant danger. They disrupt agriculture, threaten population centers, and most importantly, they keep populations in a state of fear. Fear prevents cooperation. Cooperation builds civilizations. Therefore, the predators had to go." Several students nodded in agreement. Daniel watched them, noticing how comfortable everyone seemed with this idea. "My research spans 200 years, the professor continued. "I have studied 417 spacefaring species. All of them eliminated their apex predators between 1,000 and 5,000 years before achieving interstellar travel. This is not coincidence. This is law, natural law." The hologram changed to show peaceful scenes. Herbivores grazing without concern, cities built without walls or defenses, children of various species playing in open fields. "This is what happens when predation ends," Kuvar said with obvious pride. "Peace becomes possible. Trust becomes natural. Civilization flourishes." Daniel felt his friend Iris Kim shift in the seat next to him. She was human too, one of only 5 humans at the university. She glanced at him with raised eyebrows but said nothing. "The psychology of prey species is well documented," the professor went on. "Once freed from predatory pressure, these species developed enhanced cooperation, stronger social bonds, and reduced aggression. Some of you in this room are descended from prey species. Your ancestors knew fear every day. You do not. That is progress." A Delphian student named Nira spoke up, her voice coming through her water-filled helmet speaker. "What about species descended from predators? Are there any?" "Very few," Kuvar admitted. "Perhaps 3% of known civilizations. And even they eliminated competing apex predators from their worlds. My own people, the Centaurians, were pursuit predators millions of years ago, but we evolved past that. We modified our own biology, suppressed those violent instincts, and became better for it." Daniel felt dozens of eyes turn toward the human section of the classroom. He knew what they were thinking. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, only making contact 40 years ago. Everyone had questions about Earth. "Now some might wonder about unusual cases," Kuvar said, seeming to read the room. "Let me be clear. Any species capable of reaching the stars has moved beyond predation. They must have. The technology, the cooperation required, the centuries of focused effort. These things cannot happen in a world still dominated by predatory violence." Daniel raised his hand slowly. The professor noticed. "Yes, Mr. Wright?" "Earth still has apex predators," Daniel said quietly. The room went completely silent. Students turned to stare at him. Someone in the front row gasped. Kuvar's expression became stern. "I am aware that Earth retained more megafauna than most worlds. But surely you do not mean true apex predators, perhaps some large omnivores in protected reserves." "No, sir," Daniel said, keeping his voice respectful. "Real apex predators. Bears that can kill with one strike, sharks that hunt in every ocean, crocodiles that have barely changed in millions of years, big cats that can take down prey 3 times their size, and humans." The gasping spread through the room now. Tobin turned completely around in his seat, all 4 arms gripping the desk. "Mr. Wright," the professor said with forced patience, "humans are omnivores with some retained hunting instincts. That is quite different from being apex predators." "Humans are persistence hunters," Daniel replied. "We chase prey for hours until it collapses from exhaustion. We hunt in coordinated packs. We have forward-facing eyes for tracking movement. We are pursuit predators who became the most successful species on our planet. Nira's voice crackled through her speaker. You still hunt animals? For food? Some do, Iris said, speaking up for the first time. But more importantly, we live with predators. They are still out there. In the forests, the oceans, the mountains. We share our world with them. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmuring. Several students were visibly disturbed. A Pleiadian near the front stood up and moved to a different seat, farther from the humans. Professor Kuvar held up his hand for silence. This is clearly a cultural misunderstanding. What humans call predators are likely just large animals. True apex predators, the kind that shaped evolution through terror. Those are gone from all civilized worlds. They must be. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but then closed it. He could see the certainty in Kuvar's face. The professor had spent 2 centuries building this theory. No amount of talking would change his mind right now. We will continue this discussion another time, Kuvar said firmly. For now, let us move on to the ecological benefits of predator extinction. The lecture continued, but Daniel barely heard it. He noticed other students glancing at him nervously throughout the rest of the class. When the session finally ended, most beings gave him a wide berth as they filed out. Tobin approached him in the corridor outside, curiosity overcoming his obvious discomfort. Is it true? Do humans really still hunt and kill other creatures? Yes, Daniel said simply. But why? You have technology. You have farms. Why would you? Because it is part of who we are, Daniel answered. We are predators, Tobin. We are also builders and artists and scientists. But yes, we are predators too. The Rigelian backed away slowly, all 4 hands raised as if to ward something off. Then he turned and hurried down the corridor. Iris sighed. That went well, he asked. Daniel said, fair enough. But I think we just made Professor Kuvar's life's work very complicated. Daniel looked back at the lecture hall doors. Maybe it needs to be complicated. Maybe they all need to understand what we really are. And what are we? Daniel smiled without humor. Something they thought was extinct. Dr. Amara Singh's office overlooked the university gardens where students from 100 worlds studied, under artificial sunlight, calibrated to their home stars. Daniel knocked on her doorframe even though it was open, and the human professor looked up from her work with a knowing smile. I heard about the lecture, she said, gesturing for him to enter. Kuvar sent me a rather pointed message about managing my human students better. Daniel winced. Sorry about that. Don't be. Amara closed her tablet and leaned back in her chair. I have been waiting for someone to challenge his theory for years. I am just glad it was you and not me. I still have to work with him on the faculty council. Do you think he is wrong? Daniel asked, settling into the visitor's chair. I think he is incomplete, Amara said carefully. His data about other species is accurate. They did eliminate their apex predators, but he assumes this was necessary rather than simply common. There is a difference. She pulled up a holographic display between them. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing biological and psychological data from hundreds of species. I have been studying threat responses across different civilizations, Amara explained. When presented with danger, most spacefaring species show extreme stress responses. Freeze, flee, or flock behavior. Their heart rates spike and stay elevated. Their decision-making becomes impaired. Some even shut down completely. Because they evolved without predatory pressure, Daniel said, understanding. Exactly. For the last several thousand years, these species have lived in safe environments. Their instincts for dealing with predators have atrophied. When humans respond to threats, we show different patterns. Elevated heart rate, yes, but it stabilizes quickly. We assess, we plan, we act. Sometimes we even become calmer. Daniel thought about his time as a wilderness guide back on Earth, leading hikers through mountain country where bears and mountain lions roamed. It is like muscle memory. We know what predators are because we are predators. Precisely. Amara leaned forward, her expression growing more animated. And I want to prove it properly, with data that even Kuvar cannot dismiss. How? She pulled up an image of a planet green and blue and alive. Theros 4, uninhabited, but it has a fully functioning ecosystem, including apex predators. Several species of them, in fact. I want to take an expedition there. Mixed species crew. Document how different beings respond to genuine predatory threats in controlled conditions. Daniel felt his pulse quicken. That sounds dangerous, and I will be safe. Fortified observation post, defensive perimeters, emergency extraction protocols. But yes, there will be real predators nearby. That is the point. I need to show what happens when species with different evolutionary backgrounds face the same threats. Kuvar will hate this idea. Kuvar already hates this idea, Amara said with a slight grin. I submitted the proposal this morning. He responded within an hour, calling it reckless and unnecessary. Will it get approved? Dean Calm is reviewing it now. The Antarian administration values research, even controversial research. As long as safety protocols are solid, I think we have a chance. Daniel looked at the image of Theros 4 rotating slowly in the holographic display. It looked beautiful. It also looked wild in a way most civilized worlds had forgotten. I want to volunteer, he said. I was hoping you would say that. I need humans on this expedition. You and Iris both, if she agrees. But I also need volunteers from other species. People willing to face their fears for the sake of understanding. Over the next few days, word spread through the university about the proposed expedition. Reactions varied wildly. Some students thought it sounded exciting. Others were horrified at the idea of deliberately going near apex predators. A Pleiadian student organization filed a formal complaint, calling the expedition unethical and traumatizing. But some beings were genuinely curious. Tobin approached Daniel in the cafeteria 3 days after the lecture. The Rigelian still seemed nervous, but he sat down across from Daniel with determined movements. I want to understand, Tobin said without preamble, what you are, what predators are. I have been researching Earth since the lecture, and everything I read seems impossible. How does any species survive with so many dangerous creatures? You learn to be careful, Daniel said. You learn to read signs. You learn when to be quiet and when to make noise. You learn respect. Respect for things that want to kill you. Respect for things that could kill you but usually choose not to. Most predators avoid humans if they can. We are not easy prey. We are unpredictable and we fight back. Predators want easy meals, not battles. Tobin's 4 hands fidgeted with his food tray. Dr. Singh is taking volunteers for Theros 4. I heard. I am thinking about signing up. Daniel looked at the Rigelian with new respect. That takes courage. Or stupidity, Tobin said, but he smiled slightly. My people have been safe for so long that we have forgotten what danger truly means. Maybe that is not good. Maybe we should remember. By the end of the week, Dr. Singh had her crew. Daniel and Iris, obviously. Tobin, surprisingly. Nira, the Delphian, who said her people's ancient mythology spoke of predators and she wanted to see if the stories were real. A Pleiadian security officer named Ren, who volunteered despite his personal discomfort, because someone needed to maintain safety protocols. And Grix, an Andromedan pilot whose crystalline silicon-based biology made them naturally curious about carbon-based predation. Dean Calm approved the expedition with extensive safety requirements. Professor Kuvar registered his objections formally, but could not block the project. The university valued academic freedom, even when it made some faculty uncomfortable. The night before departure, Iris found Daniel on one of the observation decks. Looking out at the stars, having second thoughts? She asked. No, you? Maybe a little. What if Kuvar is right? What if exposing prey species to predators does traumatize them? What if we are putting people in danger just to prove a point? Daniel considered this. I think the danger is in not understanding. The galaxy is huge. There are going to be threats out there that nobody expects. Species that do not follow the normal patterns. If everyone assumes predation is extinct, what happens when they find out it isn't? They panic, Iris said quietly. They panic. But if they understand it, if they have seen it and learned from it, maybe they handle it better. Maybe that knowledge saves lives someday. That is a lot of maybe. Yeah. But Dr. Singh is right about one thing. Humans are different. We need to show them why. Not to prove we are better, but to show that different evolutionary paths create different strengths. Maybe the galaxy needs that diversity. Iris nodded slowly. Okay, but if a giant space monster tries to eat me, I am blaming you. Fair enough. They stood together looking at the stars, both of them aware that in a few days, they would be on a world where being eaten was actually a possibility, where predators still ruled their domains, where the rules that governed civilized space did not apply. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Daniel felt a strange sense of homecoming, like he was going back to something fundamental that he had not realized he was missing. Back to a world where humans were not strange or scary or different. Back to a world where being a predator was simply part of the natural order. Back to a world that remembered what teeth were for. Theros IV filled the viewport as their shuttle descended through the atmosphere. Dense forests stretched to every horizon, broken only by rivers that gleamed like silver threads in the sunlight. Daniel pressed his face closer to the window, trying to take in every detail. Beside him, Tobin made a nervous clicking sound with his mouth parts. It looked so open, the Rigelian said. No cities, no structures, just wilderness. Beautiful, isn't it? Iris said from across the aisle. Terrifying, Tobin corrected. Grix, the Andromedan pilot, brought them down smoothly near the research outpost. The building sat in a cleared area surrounded by high fences topped with sensors and deterrent systems. It looked solid but small against the massive forest pressing in from all sides. Dr. Singh was first out of the shuttle, breathing deeply.
Smell that? Real air.
No recyclers, no filters. This is what planets used to smell like before everyone sterilized them. Daniel stepped onto the landing pad and immediately understood what she meant. The air carried 1,000 scents, growing things, decaying things, living things. It smelled wild. It smelled dangerous. It smelled right. Ren emerged from the shuttle last, his Pleiadian features tight with stress. The perimeter is secure. Completely, Dr. Singh assured him. Electrified fencing, motion sensors, automated deterrents. Nothing larger than a rabbit has breached this compound in 5 years. What about things smaller than rabbits? Ren asked. Well, insects get through, but they won't kill you. Probably. Ren did not look reassured. The outpost interior was functional but comfortable. Sleeping quarters, laboratory space, a common area with large windows overlooking the forest, and a central observation tower that rose above the tree line. Dr. Singh gathered everyone in the common area for the initial briefing. We are here to observe and document, she said, pulling up holographic displays of local fauna. Theros IV has 3 primary apex predators. Pack hunters similar to earth wolves, aerial predators that nest in the cliffs to the north, and this creature. The hologram showed something massive and armored, standing on 4 legs with a head that seemed too large for its body. Rows of horn-like protrusions ran down its spine. We are calling it a thornback, Dr. Singh continued. Solitary hunter. Extremely intelligent, territorial. It hunts at dawn and dusk primarily, but has been observed at all hours. One of these creatures lives in the territory surrounding this outpost. Lives near us? Neera's voice crackled from her watersuit speakers. How near? Its territory includes the outpost, yes. But it has learned that the fences mean food is not available here. It hunts in the forest like it always has. Tobin raised 2 of his hands. Has anyone been killed by these creatures? The previous research team had no casualties. They followed protocols, stayed behind the barriers, and treated the local predators with respect and caution. We will do the same. For the first 3 days they observed from safety. The forest teemed with life once you learned to look for it. Herbivores moved in herds, never staying in one place long. Birds filled the canopy, their calls carrying warnings that Daniel learned to interpret. And the predators moved through it all like shadows. On the 2nd day, they watched a pack of hunters bring down a large herbivore near the river. The alien students stared in horror as nature played out its ancient dance. Tobin excused himself and was quietly sick outside the observation room. Neera watched in silence, her aquatic features unreadable behind her helmet. Ren paced nervously, unable to look away but clearly wanting to. Daniel and Iris watched with sad understanding. The herbivore's death was not cruel. It was quick. The predators were efficient, not sadistic. This was food, survival, the fundamental exchange that kept ecosystems balanced. They look so much like wolves, Iris murmured. Convergent evolution, Daniel replied. Pack hunting works. It has worked on dozens of worlds. Dr. Singh recorded everything, noting not just the predators but the responses of her team. The differences were stark. Humans watched with engaged interest, sometimes sad but always focused. The other species showed distress ranging from mild discomfort to near panic. That night, Grix approached Daniel in the common area. The crystalline being's form refracted the light into rainbow patterns as they moved. Your species finds this normal? Grix asked, their voice like wind chimes. Not normal exactly, but natural. We understand it. My people have no biological predators. Our world had none. We evolved from mineral deposits given consciousness by stellar radiation. The concept of one living thing consuming another for survival is foreign to us intellectually. But watching it today, it bothered you? No, that is what surprises me. I expected horror. Instead, I feel curious. The efficiency is remarkable. The herbivore population remains healthy because the predators remove the weak and sick. This maintains balance, exactly. But the others do not see it this way. They see only death. Daniel nodded. Their ancestors were prey. For millions of years, their survival depended on avoiding predators at all costs. That fear is written into their genes. We have it too, but we also have the hunter's perspective. We understand both sides. On the fourth night, sensors detected movement near the perimeter. Everyone gathered in the observation tower as spotlights swept the tree line. 2 eyes reflected the light, much too high off the ground to be anything small. The thornback emerged from the forest slowly, its armored bulk moving with surprising grace. It approached the fence, stopping just beyond the deterrent range. Its massive head turned, scanning the outpost with clear intelligence. "It is studying us," Dr. Singh whispered. The creature circled the perimeter, staying just out of range. It paused at several points, lowering its head to sniff the ground. Testing. Learning. Ren backed away from the window. "We should leave. Right now." "It cannot get through the fence," Dr. Singh said. "You said the previous team had no casualties. How many teams have there been? This is the second research expedition to this outpost. So 1 team, 1 data point. That is not enough to guarantee safety." Daniel watched the thornback carefully. The creature was not acting aggressively. It was being cautious, methodical, smart. It is not trying to get in. It is gathering information. About what? About us. About whether we are prey or something else. The thornback completed its circuit of the outpost and melted back into the forest. But Daniel had the distinct feeling they had not seen the last of it. The creature had learned the layout now. It knew where the weak points were, where the gates were, how the humans and other beings moved. It was doing what any intelligent predator would do. It was planning. Iris found Daniel later, staring out the window into the dark forest. "You look worried. That thornback is smart. Really smart. Dr. Singh said it would not attack the outpost. It won't. Not unless something changes. But predators are patient. They wait for opportunities. What kind of opportunities?" Daniel did not answer. He just kept watching the tree line, seeing nothing but darkness and feeling the weight of unseen eyes watching back. In the forest, something moved. Something large and armored and very, very patient. I spent 2 centuries looking at what predators did to prey species. The fear, the death, the evolutionary pressure. I saw only the negative impacts. But I never considered what predators did for themselves. The intelligence required to hunt successfully. The patience. The ability to assess risks and make split-second decisions. These are valuable traits. They can be. Humanity kept these traits not through violence but through choice. You could have eliminated all your predators thousands of years ago. You had the technology, but you chose coexistence instead. Why? Daniel thought about the grizzly bears in the Rocky Mountains where he had worked as a guide. The mountain lions that occasionally wandered into foothill towns. The sharks that swam off every coast. Because they belong there. Because the world is richer with them in it. Because we are smart enough to share space with dangerous things. That is wisdom many species lack. We chose safety at the cost of understanding. You chose understanding despite the danger. I am not certain which choice was better, but I am certain that the galaxy benefits from having both perspectives represented. They stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the campus. Hundreds of species mingled below, learning and growing together, a fragile peace built on mutual understanding and respect for differences. "Where do you go from here?" Kuvar asked. "Finish my degree. Maybe teach. There is a lot of work to do helping other species understand humans, and helping humans understand our place in this community." "You would be good at teaching. You have patience, and you understand both sides of the predator-prey dynamic. That is rare." Kuvar extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. "Thank you, Daniel, for challenging me, for being right when I was wrong, for showing an old scholar that there is always more to learn." Daniel shook his hand. "Thank you for listening, Professor. That took courage too." They stood together watching the university below, an old Centaurian scholar who had built his reputation on one theory and a young human who had gently dismantled it. Not enemies. Not even rivals. Just two beings trying to understand a complex galaxy together. The apex predators were not gone. They had never been gone. They were walking through university corridors, teaching classes, making friends across species barriers. They were human. And that was okay. More than okay. That was exactly what the galaxy needed, even if it had not known it until now. Someone who remembered what teeth were for and chose to smile instead. Someone who could face danger without panic. Someone who understood predation but chose protection. Someone who proved that being an apex predator and being civilized were not contradictory. They were just two parts of the same complex, fascinating, necessary whole. Daniel looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the artificial sky. Somewhere out there, humanity was finding its place among civilizations that had forgotten what humans had always known. That danger was real. That predators existed. That strength meant choosing when not to use your teeth. And that sometimes the scariest thing in the galaxy was the one who smiled at you and meant it.